Hi everyone, Peter Swain here, www.hackmankind.com. I'm here today with Positive Jess, our relationship analyst. Jess, good morning, good afternoon, no matter where you are, and what are you talking to us about today?
Hi, Peter, and thank you so much for y'all tuning in. I'm going to be talking about who is in your relationship today. Who's in your relationship? You're like, what do you mean? It's my partner and myself. And if you're not in a relationship and you're watching this, think about your previous relationships. And even if you're in a relationship, think about this one and the others. Who is in your relationship? So why am I talking about this? Who's actually showing up? Who is showing up? So I was reading this incredible book, Peter, Who Changes Everything or something like that. And it talks about how we have, my understanding of it, we have different personalities, right? So there's the us when we were with our kids. There's the us when we're in a boardroom. There's the us when we're out on the beach having fun. There's the us when we're talking to our parents. Very different aspects that we bring forward. Even when we were doing some of the other calls, Peter, you had brought up how you put a different hat on for a different mood or a different zone that you want to be in, right? And so that is one of the things that I want us to be reflecting this week is who is showing up in your relationship at this moment and in most times when you're interacting with your partner. And the reason I wanted to go there because you bring in different attributes. And there's a really cool exercise that I did with my coach way back when that helped me tremendously in my relationship. And that was my avatar, right? Of this person who I want to show up. And I'm not saying be fake. I'm not saying show up as somebody that you're not and put on a mask. We don't want that. There are different parts of us that are authentically us that show up in different times, depending on our mood, depending on if we've eaten or not. I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I don't eat, I get hangry. And so there's all of these elements that we can look at. So I'm going to invite you, call it a name, right? So my name at the time, I called her Alessandra. And I created this Alessandra persona where I looked at, what are her eating habits? I looked at what are the things that she does. So I have my little earrings and triangles. So it makes me think of the triad. We're talking about our state, our emotional state and how we show up. And the triad is like, you can draw a little triangle and you have different aspects of those, the different angles. So you have your physiology. So if you think of the person's physiology, so if I think Alessandra's physiology, she stands tall, she walks with confidence. She, when she talks, she's got a lot of confidence. How else? Physiology, she works out, right? She works out, she stays fit, she eats in a healthy way. So look at all the aspects of physiology. And I would actually I wrote down on my computer, on a piece of paper, whatever it is, write down the avatar because it's so powerful to just go back. I remember, and I'll tell you a little story about shoes. And Peter, if I don't remember to tell the story about shoes, you'll remind me. So one angle of the triangle is physiology. The other angle of the triangle is focus. What are you focusing on? What are you choosing to spend your time in? One of the things that Peter shared with me this a couple of weeks ago or last week was a great playlist of motivational like song/rap that I now put on every morning when I take a shower. I put it on, I ask Alexa to put it on, and it makes me feel amazing. And I'm feeding that and I'm focusing on creating the things that I want to create. So if you're looking at your relationship, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the things that you dislike about your partner? Are you focusing on all the tiny little details that are going wrong? Or are you focusing on choosing and focusing on the things that are beautiful and the gestures, the love? We talked about the 5 love languages last week. Are you looking to see how they're expressing their love? It may be a different love language than you. And if you haven't watched that video, make sure to watch it after this one. So what are you focusing on? What does I call her Alessandra, name your avatar, your preferred name. So what does she focus on. And I started writing all of that, focusing on how amazing her friends are, focusing on how her partner is providing for her. She focuses on, you know, how grateful she is to live in a beautiful home and have a beautiful family life, right? So what is it that that avatar focuses on a daily basis? And then language, right? What kind of language does that avatar bring forward, right? So does she only say kind, loving words to her partner, right? His or her partner? Or was it more like sometimes with anger or frustration, we start like barking, right? And just being conscious, is like, no, I'm Alessandra. This is who I am. And we can think of like physiology, what kind of clothes, what kind of, and the language, what kind of quotes does she believe in, right? Do you believe in terms of relationship, in terms of what matters? What is it? Who is this person that you want to be that will show up? Now, all the things that I mentioned not only affect obviously my relationship, it affects all the areas of my life, right? But think about, who do you want to show up when you're home, right? When you are being a wife, a girlfriend, a partner. Who is it that you want to show, that is going to be showing up the majority of the time? And just focusing, and it makes it easy. It makes it so much easier to refer to that, and having it on my phone so you can write it down and then take a picture so you have it with you all the time. And when you're making decisions or when you're feeling certain feelings, you just look at it and it's a beautiful reminder. It's a beautiful reminder as who is it that you truly are? Because all of these things are not fake, right? It's not like I don't listen to motivational songs and music. I just made it easier now, right? And Alessandra is more prone to do that, right? I can get my poor little me. I had my poor little me that I would go into sometimes in my relationship, right? When things were not going well, and poor little me, and you can already see my facial expression. That's who poor little me is, and that's her physiology, and she talks like this, and you know, I don't want poor little me to be in my relationship. What kind of relationship am I going to have? What kind of response am I going to have with my partner? Now, Alessandra, yes, there are challenges that show up, but the way she dealt with it, very different than poor little me. Oh, poor little me. I'm going to go over there and just cry and just, I'm hopeless, right? Alessandra, no, not hopeless. Definitely. There's always something that we can figure out, and making things happen, shifting, showing up in a beautiful way, having healthy boundaries, all of that would show up. And it was so much easier to call on it and shift in that energy by giving it a name, giving her a name, giving him a name. I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to show up in my relationship. I'm going to call on Alessandra. So I'm hoping that's useful and that clarifies. And I did promise a story of the shoes. So I'll give you a little example. I remember going out shopping, and I went to this store where they had all these like discount shoes, and I found these boots, the sparkling boots. They're gorgeous boots. And I saw them. I'm like, oh, those are so cool. And then my automatic self was like, oh, that's too childish. Like, an adult doesn't wear that kind of stuff. And then I asked myself, what would Alessandra do? Right? And you think, well, what does this have to do with relationship? Hang on, you'll realize. And what would Alessandra do? And I'm like, oh, she would totally rock those boots with like a nice blazer and all that, even though they're super sparkly. They're like sparkly, like kid looking, but putting on like a nice pair of jeans or this, it would totally, she would totally rock it. So no questions asked, no other thinking. I bought the boots. And I've worn them and worn them and worn them, and for so long. And I would go to seminars. They're so comfortable too. And I remember sitting at a seminar, a private seminar. For those who know, I attended some very high ticket events for Tony Robbins. And this was a relationship seminar. And that was like, I think it's $20,000 just to attend. And you have to be part of a mastermind group in order to attend. And so that, I was just sitting there, and Tony Robbins comes on the middle of an intervention. This is when he's coaching somebody, and he brings me over and he goes, what's your shoe size? I'm like, 7. And she was very tall lady. And her shoe size was considerably bigger. So he was like, okay, take off your shoes. I was like, okay. And I take off my sparkly boots. And he hands over the sparkly boots to this incredible soul, and she just holds the boots and just starts crying. And the reason I said that is because she, for the first time in so many years, got in touch with her her feminine side. She had been so masculine for many, many years, and that totally freed her to like sparkly things and what girls like, the girly stuff that people or society have put labels on, right? And why am I telling the story? Like, how does it affect relationship? If it's having that effect on her, what do you think it had in terms of my effect every single day that I wore those boots? And how did I show up in my relationship wearing them? Do you think I was more feminine wearing the sparkly boots? 100%. It was probably very unconscious, but wearing and dressing a certain way and showing up in a certain way meant that I was then being more feminine. And when we talk about it in my course and much deeper level on Relight and Revive course that's coming out real soon, I talk about how the depolarization in a couple can be so strong, which means the feminine and the masculine energy, either it's just people showing up or they're both feminine or both masculine energy, and the passion goes away, the sensuality, sexuality dies, and it's really, it's kind of sad because it's just a matter of polarity. And if you just get back to your true authentic core, magic happens, sparks fly. It actually works, guys. And so all this to say, if I had not said, what would Alessandra do? I would have never gotten those boots. That girl would never have been able to, well, she probably would have been able to switch in a different way, but I wouldn't have been able to help her and create that distinction of how important and simple it is to just call on your avatar. So there's your homework. Make sure you fill out a full page. I had on my notes, I had to like scroll on the quotes. What does she wear? What does she do? How does she handle conflict? What does she, think about that triangle. Think about my earrings, right? Physiology, language, and focus. And so what does your avatar do and where does it focus? So that's what I'm leaving you with this week.
Amazing. Just as an aside, I went through a very similar exercise, but on the flip side of the coin. I invented my villain, right? Because I used to find it very hard to apologize to people if I did something wrong. So in my head, I now apologize for the guy who's called Pedro. I apologize for what Pedro did. I don't say that because the other person will be like, what are you talking about? It's weird. You need to acknowledge it. But when I walk away from a situation where I haven't been, so Pedro is ego-driven, he likes to be the center of attention, he proves that he's smarter than people by putting them down, he argues the person, not the subject, he is very conservative in his values and not very liberal, and whenever I find myself representing that, I go, no, I don't want to be him, I want to be me. So it's almost exactly the same as your exercise. And I think yours is probably more positive because mine is a kind of a stick to beat myself with, but it's also a stick to excuse myself, to go, I'm not perfect all the time, far, far from it. And every so often I'll slip into that, the darker side of my personality. And it becomes really easy to go, that wasn't me. That isn't who I want to be. And to distance myself away from it further and further and say, don't be in that space. And if I find myself in that space, I'm as simple as I am complex. It means I haven't drunk water, I haven't slept properly, I haven't eaten properly, and I haven't exercised. If I haven't done those things, I will become more that person. So it's just fascinating listening to you because I would recommend Jess's method, not mine. But if either of those resonate with you, then fantastic. And myself and my wife call each other out on it.
And you can tell each other the names too. It's like, is that Pedro? Right? Yeah. And I did.
She does.
And thank you so much for bringing that because I think it's powerful to have both. I think it's really powerful to have both. I had poor little me. So that the equivalent was poor little me. And I think I'd put her as sad Sally, but I just remember of poor little me. So I call her poor little me. And poor little me would just feel really down on herself. It's not the Pedro, like the anger, because that I don't go there as often. I go to the poor little me more often. So the opposite of Alessandra was poor little me. And so poor little me is, and one of the things that and so we could see that it's poor little me and that's not who I want to be. I want to be Alessandra. So being able to name both and going back and noticing, it's like, oh, that's poor little me, thank you and no thank you, and then I want to be Alessandra. And also understanding, and you said something about the stick to beat you up with or something like that. Yes, and it's beautiful to remember and to understand that there are reasons why Pedro exists and poor little me exists. Like poor little me nurturing.
I'm okay with. I'm sorry. I'm okay with the stick because I'm comfortable and confident in the core of who I am. Right. So I'm okay going, oh, you dick. That isn't who you want to be. I remember an occasion, and it's quite funny. The other person in this equation doesn't remember this. Right. But I was speaking to Tia, one of our panelists, before Hack Mankind, and I said something mean. It was mean. I devalued her opinion in a conversation where I'd asked for her help, and it wasn't conscious, but it was a sign of me of superiority, because actually I was quite intimidated by how successful she is as a coach. Right? And I haven't probably ever said that to her, so if she listens to this, Tia, I love you very much. But she's super successful at what she does. I asked for her opinion. She gave me an opinion. I said, oh, you wouldn't understand because X, Y, Z. Right? And I saw her face change, and I walked away, and I went, that's not who you are. That's not who you are. That's not who you want to be. That's not how you want to show up. That's not how you want to present yourself. That's not how you want people to know you. Right? This person had done nothing. I don't mind crushing people if people come at me. If people are being aggressive at me, I don't mind stepping up into that space. That's okay. But Tia was purely in a space of love, trying to be a friend. And I'd never, ever want to do that to somebody that's trying to help, no matter, even if it's kludgy, which it wasn't in this case. Even if it's kludgy, if someone's coming from a place of love, you should respect and honor that. And I spent about 4 hours looking for her to apologize, because I'm really, really sorry. I wasn't, it's not how I want to be. It's not what I meant. It's not what and I know. And to me, that just identifying it as that's not me. Right? It is a stick, but it's also an absolution. It means you don't need to bring that judgment inside and judge you as that person. You can just give yourself that bit of distance. Now, all of this is fake, guys. All of it's a construct, but it helps and it works. Yeah. And as Ed Lay, our health panelist, talks about all the time, engineering the environment is much easier than engineering yourself. And this is a perfect example of that. This is just a very easy way to get into a different mindset, to be able to just snap and go, I'm here now. So I'd strongly recommend it. I won't necessarily get the sparkly shoes myself, Jess, but it speaks volumes. And if everybody can have the self-awareness to look at that and take that and shift it, I think it's a great hack. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. And it's, the thing is really just asking yourself, what would so-and-so do? What would Alessandra do? And the thing is, for like poor little me and maybe Pedro, is where, they serve their purpose. There are protectors, there are nurturers. There's a side to that makes sense why they're there and why they exist. Right? You said, like, I have no problem crushing somebody who's really, coming. And if you want to defend your family or people that you love, I know you are such an incredible soul. And I know that if I ever have any issues, I can definitely come to you and you will step up, because I think Pedro exists.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And everybody that knows me, that I care and value, knows that that person is there and available. And it's taken me 20 years to get that controlled. And it's something that I call, it's just a personal phrase for me, I call it alpha male with grace. Right? You can stand and own a room without telling everybody that you own the room. Right? And as soon as you're telling people you own the room, it means you're not really an alpha. Right? You don't need to, but having that tool at your disposal whenever you need it to go, right, now we're going to talk. And you see people that have never seen it in me before go, whoa, okay, we're in a different space. So yeah, I think all of those personas exist. And if you have trouble with this exercise, guys, go and watch a film, right? Go and watch a film of a hero or a heroine or a villain that you identify with at any level, right? And start there, right? This is not an exercise of perfection. I guarantee Jess's Alessandra list evolved and adapted
Yes,
and
it kept
moved and
changing.
shifted.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'll see something and go, oh, she does boxercise, she does this, she does that. As you identify with different things, the first version, V1, will be very naive, right? But it's still the starting point to this. So I would say if you find it hard, whether it's a book, a film, a TV show, say, I'm just going to be like them. Just borrow them and just adapt it to bring out your authenticity. Because as Jess said, and I think it's really important, Jess, we all have every single one of those attributes inside us. Right? It's not inauthentic. And you look at the best public speakers in the world, and you ask them, what's your secret to your success? And every single one of them that I know of is the 10, 20 seconds before they go on camera. Right? Every single one of them says, I get myself in the right space, I listen to the right music, I move. I was speaking to Sean Callaghan, who's a great speaker. Like you can put a camera on Sean Callaghan and say, talk to me about this, go. And his delivery is perfect. How do you do that? He's like, I walk around, I dance, I listen to music, I hit myself, I pump myself up. Tony Robbins has the rebounder, the small trampoline behind stage. Every single speaker, when you ask them why, it's because they put themselves into that space, into that state, into that personality, into Alessandra, wherever it is, they put themselves there before they come and deliver. And they're not being inauthentic, they're just accentuating and choosing, as you said, how are you going to show up?
Yes. And so if you start showing up like that in your relationship, you'll see things changing and you'll see magic happen. I promise.
Beautiful. My final thoughts on this, Jess, is I'm going to take it slightly off topic, tiny amount, to everybody. Before you get here, just make sure you are showing up. Right? Put your phone in your pocket, put it on mute. If you're going to spend, I spend nowhere near the amount of time with my kids as other people do. But when I spend time with my kids, they get 100% of me. When I spend time with my wife, they get 100% of me. And when I spend time with you guys here, you get 100% of me. Right? And I think that in some ways, just for me, is almost more important than what you're saying. I think they go together very, very well. The first thing to make sure is you're actually showing up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than sitting on your phone and saying, yeah, I care about you, I value you, but this little device is more important.
You write that down
first of all, show up.
You write that down on the list, like Alessandra.
Good idea.
Like this is how she acts around her friends at dinner. When we go out to dinner, phones stay in the bag or in the pocket, whatever, or they're even off or in airplane mode. And you could start and add that to the list. The list keeps going. I started my list in 2016, 17, and it keeps growing, and it's such a beautiful reminder.
I have a hack for this, by the way. When I was running my last business, I had a pay-as-you-go top-up Nokia $20 phone.
Yes.
And I used to take that when I took my kids to tumble tots or gym or dancing or swimming, or when I went out for a date with my wife, I took that phone with me and I left my iPhone at home. I think it's literally a $20 thing that I literally beg people to do, because it changes your life to just be free and present for those moments.
And so you only give that phone number to head of your
people
company, your spouse,
absolutely trust list. Yeah.
It was my only call in case of emergency.
Yeah, it was my business partner, my wife, and my mother, and that was it. You three have this number, and that's it. Do not give this to anybody else. And if you give it to anyone else, I'm going to throw it away. Do not give this to anybody else. And that was on 24/7. Like that never left my side. And I think it got called once in 3 months, right? Which is oh, okay. Apparently I don't actually need this as much as I thought I did. But keeping it there meant I didn't need to take my iPhone with me. Right, I think we've gone over time. Jess, thank you very much. For everybody that's listening, be watching us, you should be on our website by now. So that's www.hackmankind.com, where we've got dozens and dozens of 30-minute moments like this with people like Jess, people like myself, Ed, our health person, Karen, Sean Callaghan. We've got special interviews, and there's something in every single one of those for you to take away and use today. Jess, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And all week, please remember who's in your relationship. Take care, guys.
Love it. Bye-bye.